This is an art collage novel video. I made this series so you guys can experience the story faster. The video will focus on the character's psychology, the images are for illustration purposes only. Shenfeng hesitated for a moment before he told him everything he knew. I've just circled around the unaging mountain. It's full of life, but there's no sign of any primates. Mr. Yu and the others seem to have disappeared completely. There are also a few places that are very strange, and I don't dare to enter rashly. It's very likely that Mr. Yu and the others have gone in. He did not have any conflict of interest with Yunxiao and the others, and the reason he helped Mr. Yu was to use his strength to break through the shackles of martial honor. However, the environment here was giving him an increasingly unsafe feeling, and an indescribable sense of crisis was spreading in his heart. He could not explain the reason, but it felt so real. After he finished speaking, his eyes fell on Zhang Xiaotian. He thought that this group of people would definitely be led by Zhang Xiaotian. Moreover, the Soul Devourer race was the overlord of the Western region and had a high prestige in the hearts of the Western region's martial artists. They would definitely have a way to deal with it. However, Zhang Xiaotian was looking at Yun Xiao, as if waiting for his answer. Shenfeng was taken aback by this. Sir Shin, Yun Xiao said thoughtfully, since you have circled more than half of the unaging mountain and have not found anything, there will be no result even if you continue. You and the others aren't people who are reckless. Since they've already entered the restriction, they must have their reasons. This is our only hope of breaking through. Shenfeng also felt the same way. After a brief discussion, they all headed towards the restricted areas. The nearest unexplored land turned out to be a steep cliff. It looked no different from an ordinary cliff. It was rugged and made of mountain rocks. There were also some vines, wild grass, and wildflowers on it, which were slightly hot under the scorching sun. However, as soon as their divine senses swept up, they were immediately swallowed up. It was like a suction cup. Not only could it absorb divine senses, but when everyone tried to attack, they all disappeared on the mountain wall without leaving any traces. Strange, it can only absorb spiritual sense and vital qi. Yunxiao gently touched it with his hand and found nothing unusual. What if I do this? Waves of vital qi were emitted from his body, wrapping him into a ball of light and slamming him into the stone wall. Whoosh! He only felt that the space around him had changed, and everything in front of him turned pitch black. It was as if he had entered a strange place. Rays of light began to appear under his feet, crisscrossing in the space and forming squares that spread out in all directions. He was standing on one of the nodes, and the entire space extended infinitely. It should be some kind of restricted space, but the grid under his feet was very limited, forming a square plate floating in the void. Yun Xiao looked at the crisscrossing and orderly lines under his feet and found them very familiar. Moreover, the parallel space formed by the lines was constantly rotating with the central line as the axis, and it seemed to be unstable. Is this place really Swan and I? Just as he was feeling surprised, the figures of Yi Fan and the others also began to appear one by one, followed by Shenfeng and the nine-winged spirit serpent bird, and finally, Tang Jia. He felt a little uneasy staying outside alone, so he gritted his teeth and rushed in. Yi Fan looked around in shock. Big brother Yun Xiao, what's going on here? As the crowd appeared, the rotation of the parallel space began to slow down. Look at the lines under your feet. Don't you think it looks like something? Like what? Everyone was frowning and thinking hard, as if they couldn't remember. Go. Tang Jia's eyes widened as he shouted, go. This parallel space is like a chessboard. It was only then that everyone realized that there were indeed 19 lines in both horizontal and vertical, making a total of 361 intersection points. It was really a huge chessboard, lying horizontally in the void, vast and mighty. This is the king-level martial sovereign's profound-level weapon, the unaging mountain. What does he mean by placing a chessboard in his profound-level weapon? Zhang Xiaotian walked on it. There didn't seem to be anything special about it. He could move freely and there was no strange force restricting him. All of a sudden, light began to appear on the other side of the chessboard. Under everyone's astonished gazes, it was Shang and the others, Li included, who seemed to be fine. The four of them also widened their eyes and looked at Yunxiao and the others in shock. Lord Shang. Tang Jie's heart was filled with joy, as if he had seen his savior. He hurriedly ran over and said with wild joy, "I finally get to see you, Lord Shang." Shenfeng also stepped on the nine-winged spirit snakebird and flew over. That's great. Tang Jia was overjoyed, and with a ferocious look on his face, he stared at Yunxiao and the others and said, "Lord Shang, it's time to settle the score with these people." Yi Fan and the others were shocked and became alert. The difference in strength was too great, they were in danger. Even Yunxiao's face changed drastically. In this strange space, he could not feel any power of the four seasons, which meant that he could not condense rules at all and could only exert the power of a 4-stars martial grandmaster. In addition, the Divine Realm tablet had run out of spiritual energy, and little King Kong Gord was seriously injured. He was afraid that he could not even defeat Tang Jia. The smile remained on Shang's face, but the coldness in his eyes gradually grew stronger. "You're Li Yunxiao, right? What a small world. I didn't expect to see you again so soon. I suddenly feel very happy. I wonder if you're happy?" Zhang Xiaotian didn't know how powerful the big monster was. He only saw a few more martial grandmasters and didn't put them in his eyes. He snorted, "Are these the demon clan members you were talking about?" In his eyes, these people were not even qualified for his soul slaves to devour. Yunxiao smiled awkwardly and said, "As the saying goes, no discord, no concord. It's better to have one less enemy than one more friend. Peace is the most important thing in all things. It's better to get rid of an enemy than to keep one alive. Let's go through thick and thin together." "Bullshit." Tang Jia roared, his face extremely ferocious. He gritted his teeth and said, "Lord Shang, this kid is extremely shameless and dangerous." Also, the man in white with a dark face next to him was a martial honor expert of the Soul Devourer race. He had to be careful too. It's better to get rid of these people as soon as possible to avoid any more trouble. "That's right," you said. "The others are fine, but we must get rid of this Li Yunxiao as soon as possible. I have a feeling that he will become a major threat to our demon race." Although Shang did not take Yu's words seriously, he could not forget Yunxiao's 2 saint artifacts, and he was greatly afraid of him. A cold glint flashed in his eyes as he raised his hand and chopped down. He said softly, "Kill." The atmosphere on the chessboard instantly turned cold. The eyes of the big monsters were filled with killing intent and a light purple aura filled the air. Even Zhang Xiaotian was surprised. The killing intent made his heart palpitate. "Shenfeng, I'll leave that person from the Soul Devourer clan to you," Mr. Yu said to Shenfeng. They had a close relationship and always spoke their mind. "Don't worry." Shenfeng's answer was also extremely simple. Zhang Xiaotian had fought with him before, and as long as the 9-winged spirit snakebird restrained the soul-devouring banner, he would be able to suppress Zhang Xiaotian. Zhang Xiaotian's face changed slightly. "Li Yunxiao, I can't beat that beast. Help me. As for the rest, throw them to your companions." Those great demons were all martial grandmasters, and they looked about the same as Yunxiao. Although their killing intent was a little frightening, their cultivation bases were still there. In his opinion, with 3 martial venerables on his side, he could easily annihilate them all. The people of the Temple of Holy Fire all felt bitter in their hearts. Among those great demons, you could wipe them out by herself. If they were to fight, they would probably be completely annihilated in a few rounds. Tang Jia's face was filled with viciousness as he said with killing intent, "Leave that Li Yunxiao to me. I'll cut him into pieces with my own hands." The vermilion bird saber appeared in his hand, and the fiery red saber chi jumped and flashed. It stepped down on the chessboard step by step, and its aura kept rising, ready to explode at any time. "How dare you provoke me and go against me at every turn? I am the eldest young master of the Tang family of the 4 Extremes sect. Those who go against me never have a good ending. Today, I will give you an unforgettable lesson." Tang Jia circulated his vital qi to its peak and poured it into the vermilion bird saber. The weapon spirit also sensed it and gave out a cheerful hum, as if it was eager to drink blood. Great void slash through everything. He roared and raised his saber high, then suddenly slashed down. The entire space suddenly fell silent. When Tang Jie's saber struck just now, only a ray of light appeared on the blade and then disappeared. There was no saber light or primordial chi, and there was no change in the space, as if he had deliberately done it. This buy-in. Everyone's pupils contracted in shock. Could it be that this space also had a restriction on vital chi? Tang Jie slashed a few more times with all his might, but there was no reaction. No matter how abundant the yuan qi in his body was, he could not release it. Yi Fan also tried to send out a few punches, but he was also restricted, they were ordinary and had no power. His origin power is suppressed as expected. Overjoyed, Yun Xiao laughed wildly and said, Tang Jie, aren't you very good at this? Chop me, come and chop me. A vicious look appeared on his face as he sneered and strode forward. He clenched his fingers tightly, making a crackling sound. Humph. Tang Jie was startled and coldly snorted, since you've suppressed your origin energy, do you still want to hit me? I'm going to cut you down, what can you do? Hit me, hit me, hit me. He held the vermilion bird saber in his hand and started to provoke the other party crazily. His eyes were filled with contempt. Bang. Yun Xiao stomped on the ground and shot out like a cannonball. Suddenly, he threw a punch so fast that it was hard for the eyes to catch it. He saw Tang Jie being hit by the punch, and a terrible line of blood shot out like a fountain. Like a kite with a broken string, his body drifted away. Yun Xiao's faint voice rang out, it's good. My strength isn't suppressed. As soon as he finished speaking, the crowd saw drops of blood dripping from his fist. The big demon's hearts suddenly tightened. When Tang Jie was sent flying, an armor on his body automatically appeared to protect him, but his defense was still destroyed by the wind from Yun Xiao's fist, and he was seriously injured. With just the strength of his physical body, he actually dared to destroy the defense of the battle armor with one punch. All the great demons' hearts tightened. This kind of fist force strength was something that very few of them from the demon clan could achieve. Only those demons who specialized in cultivating their physical bodies could use their bodies as weapons and break the enemy's armor. I can't let him die. Shang's face darkened as he looked at Tang Jie, who had collapsed in the distance. Li immediately rushed forward. She was the best at healing. However, she realized that she couldn't use any of his vital chi and could only run on the grid line of the chessboard. Humph. Yun Xiao snorted coldly as he kicked his legs in Tang Jie's direction and leaped more than 10 meters high, then flew down like a big bird. Be careful, Li. The sound of you rang out as his taillight sword flew out of his hand and was thrown at Yun Xiao at an extremely fast speed, like a dagger. He himself let out a loud roar and his entire body swelled up, revealing his powerful physical body. He also leaped up and charged forward while roaring. In terms of the strength of his physical body, he was no weaker than Yun Xiao, and after forming the ancestral bloodline, he was far stronger than the latter. This strange space actually suppressed essence force, so he could only fight with his physical body. Whoosh. Although the taillight sword was sharp, it was just an ordinary weapon after its weapon charm was suppressed. With a sneer, Yun Xiao grabbed it with his palm. His mighty body had been cultivated to the peak, and no weapon in the world could hurt it. So, he grabbed the sword in his hand and laughed. Thank you for your sword. It feels pretty good. Yun Xiao grabbed the taillight sword and thrust it at the incoming Yu with great enthusiasm. Although there were no sword gleams or primordial chi, Yun Xiao's sword intent was far superior to these people. The seemingly ordinary strike seemed to cover all the acupuncture points in Yu's body, making it impossible to avoid. Yu was taken aback. This Li Yunxiao was indeed an abnormal monster, and he could not stay here any longer today. His eyes were filled with killing intent as he threw a punch at the sword radiance. No matter how high the other party's sword intent was, it was just a profound level weapon without any weapon rhythm. It was impossible to hurt him just by relying on the sharpness of the blade. Hiss. Just as Yu thought that he would be able to suppress his opponent, he felt a sharp pain in his hand. His fist had been pierced by the sword by half an inch. How did this happen? Yu endured the intense pain, but his heart was filled with shock. His body was so strong that even if Yunxiao's primordial qi was not suppressed, and he was a 4-stars martial grandmaster, he might not be able to hurt him even if he used a 9th-tier mystic weapon, let alone the fact that the other party could not use his primordial qi at all. Following Yu's scream, the great demon's pupils all shrank and they looked over in horror. Their thoughts were exactly the same as Yu's, and they didn't know what was going on. At this time, Li had already run to Tang Jie's side and checked his injury. After finding out that he was fine, he heaved a sigh of relief, picked up the vermilion bird saber beside him, and threw it to Yu, shouting, "Yu, catch." Yu endured the severe pain as he held the saber in his left hand, his eyes bloodshot, and roared as he slashed at Yunxiao. With the vermilion bird saber in his hand and his strength, he could definitely kill Yunxiao. Even if the other party was holding his own 9th-tier profound armament, he could not be stingy and used all his strength to slash down. You think I can't kill you just because you can't use your vital qi? With a sneer, Yunxiao waved the tail light sword in a strange posture in the air. It looked very disharmonious, but a strange force flowed out with every movement of the sword. Bang! As the two 9th-tier armaments collided, you felt a powerful force from the vermilion bird saber, forcing him to retreat. Moreover, there was a cut on the vermilion bird saber. This isn't just physical strength. He cried out in horror. What kind of power did you use? Sacred skill. In the distance, Yifan was shocked. He shouted in joy, so sacred skills can still be used. What Yunxiao used was the law condensation technique of the Hall of Holy Fire. Although Yuan Qi could not be used here, the law of heaven and earth was a higher existence than pure power. After he used Yi Nanshan's secret technique, every move still contained a certain law, so use pure physical defense was as easy as flipping his hand. Yi Fan was overjoyed. Since sacred skills can be used, everyone, let's attack together. Kill all these monsters. He shouted as he took out a sword and rushed forward. Ever since they entered the demon land, the people of the Temple of Holy Fire had always felt extremely vexed. They could not help in all kinds of battles, big or small. At most, they could only be substitutes. They had long been holding a breath of grievance in their hearts. Now that they discovered that their sect's sacred skill was shining brightly, and that it could still be used under the situation where everyone's power was suppressed, gathering the power of the heavens and earth, all of them were so excited that their blood boiled. Their morale was suddenly high, and they rushed forward with a roar. Each of them performed the same strange action, and in an instant, a strange power began to flow. Shang and the others looked serious. They were no strangers to the power of rules, but they did not understand how these Zant-like existences could condense rules. The only consolation was that the rule force was extremely weak. If it was under normal circumstances, they would be able to break it with a casual move, but at this moment, the monastic robe had become a fatal advantage. When Yunxiao saw that Yu was badly injured, his eyes flickered with killing intent. He suddenly kicked his legs and shot out like a sharp arrow, the tail light sword in his hand cutting through the sky with a sharp edge. Mr. Yu was also on his kill list, and both of them were determined to kill each other. Mr. Yu's eyes were very serious, but he did not panic. He stomped on the chessboard with both feet and stabilized his body with a 1,000-pounds falling technique. His physical strength was above Yunxiao's, and even if Yunxiao could condense a trace of the rules of heaven and earth, it was impossible for him to suppress him. As long as he calmed down, he could still turn the tide and kill his opponent. Bang! The vermilion bird saber met the tail light sword and once again collided with it. Yu's left hand suddenly swelled up again, and faint red blood vessels appeared on the arm, giving off a feeling of surging power. This time, it was Yunxiao who trembled. He was suppressed by Mr. Yu's strength and kept retreating. Yunxiao's face was dark as he flicked his wrist and thrust the sword directly at Mr. Yu's eyes. His advantage was his understanding of rules and sword Dao. Mr. Yu's advantage was his superior body and strength. He raised his vermilion bird saber to block the attack, and sparks flew again. The two of them were both people with strong hearts. After one move, they once again fought. The two ninth-tier profound armaments were constantly chipped, but neither of them felt any heartache. In their eyes, there was only the determination to kill the other. The seven from the Temple of Holy Fire charged at Shang and the others in different directions. Yuan Sun, who had been in the Talisman General's hand all this time, fell to the ground. He took out his battle axe and stepped forward. He was also a strength-type demon. Although these people in front of him could also condense rules, they seemed to be much weaker than Yun Xiao, and their bodies were vulnerable in his eyes. A Xian flower axe. The axe shadow directly swept out, bringing with it an overbearing wind as it cut into the crowd, wanting to kill a lot.
Ha!
The earthen jar took out a huge hammer from somewhere and smashed it against the axe. Bang! The huge force from the axe directly shook his hammer away, and his hands went numb. However, what made him feel encouraged was that he had actually blocked it. After he had used his sacred skill, he had actually managed to withstand the attack of the opponent's ninth-tier profound weapon. Although the situation was different now, it had given him endless confidence and joy. He roared as he raised his copper hammer and smashed it over. Fu's expression was extremely unsightly. He realized that he had still underestimated these people's sacred skills. Although the power of rules was weak, it still greatly suppressed his own qi. Shenfeng's expression changed slightly. He muttered a string of strange bird language as if he was conversing with the nine-winged spirit snake bird. The nine-winged spirit snake bird let out a few shrieks and circled in the air for a while before flying up and grabbing at the people from the Temple of Holy Fire. It was an 8th-tier demon beast, and its physical strength was even stronger than Yun Xiao and Yu. Its claws were as sharp as profound artifacts, enough to split mountains and split stones. With a single blow, the profound weapons in the hands of a disciple of the Hall of Holy Fire were immediately broken, and he was sent flying while coughing up blood. In the distance, Yun Xiao's face darkened as he suddenly said, "Zhang Xiaotian, let's see if you can release your soul slave." Although the soul-devouring banner was a profound-level weapon, the soul slave was a type of soul body. It was a strange power and might not be shackled. At the moment, Zhang Xiaotian and Yun Xiao were in the same boat. Without saying a word, he raised the soul-devouring flag high and unfolded it in the air. The cold air inside seemed to be suppressed, but the golden soul slave slowly flew out with a greedy look on its face. Sure enough, it works. Zhang Xiaotian was also overjoyed. He coldly commanded his soul slaves to rush forward and grab the most troublesome nine-winged spirit snake bird. The nine-winged spirit snake bird quickly flapped its wings and retreated. It was no match for the soul slave when it was at its peak, let alone now that its demonic aura was suppressed and only its physical strength was left. If it fought with the soul slave, its soul would be directly extracted by the soul slave. Demonic beasts at his level would have a certain level of intelligence and know how to avoid harm. Kiki. The soul slave was flying happily in the air, chasing after the nine-winged spirit snake bird. He was drooling non-stop, like a dam with its gates opened. On the grid line of the entire chessboard, everyone was in a mess and fighting each other. At this moment, two unfamiliar figures suddenly appeared in the space without a sound. However, the terrifying aura from their bodies suddenly pressed down on everyone's hearts, causing them to stop in their tracks. The other two also appeared out of nowhere. They seemed to be very surprised, looking at everything with astonishment. Zhang Xiaotian's face changed and he cried out, "People from the Myriad Stars Valley." They were Che Shuyao and Feng Yi. As soon as they entered the space, everyone was alerted and stopped fighting.